So what we were just talking about was the different schools of thought as far as personal training goes. We addressed that the fact that there's bodybuilders, there's physiotherapists, there's track athletes, or track coaches, and Russian weightlifting. Those are the major overlying themes that kind of dictate what we as personal trainers are able to do. Now all four of these components are great, but they don't seem to address all the problems. They don't seem to address all the needs. Sure, my mic back is on. So let's say we have bodybuilders in this school of thought. Then we have physiotherapists in this school of thought. They kind of overlap, but not really. I mean, where did we get a lot of the machine-based training from? Was it bodybuilders or physiotherapists? Physiotherapists. Why? Because they wanted to isolate specific muscles. Bodybuilders took that up and said, hey, that's a cool idea. What happens if we really load the weight on top of it? Hey, we get bigger muscles, we get more definition. Maybe we can even isolate specific aspects of muscles. The track athletes, they took that information, they said, that's BS, run. So track athletes started coming out with concepts like complex. Ben Johnson made this really popular way back in the day when he would do heavy squats and then 100-meter sprints right out the gate. Like they would bring the back onto the track, set it up so that he would do his 3-rep squats like stupidly heavy weight, rack it up and sprint right out of the squat rack. No blocks, bam, bam, bam. So the difference between that was high force, low velocity, and high velocity, low force. So still high neuromuscular demand on the system, and it was just crazy, crazy, crazy high impact exercise. Is that something you see people do now? To a degree. What do CrossFitters do? High force, high velocity, and then high force, velocity, right? Where else do CrossFitters get a lot of information from? Russian weightlifting, right? So there we go, Russian. We could also call it Soviet Russian weightlifting. So this is where we get things like kettlebells, cleans, all that kind of stuff, the Bulgarian, the Romanian, different, what we call Eastern Bloc exercises. Even though the Bulgarians didn't invent the split squat, somebody just said, hey, put one foot up, and they were a Bulgarian guy. So called it Bulgarian split squats. Now all these four schools of thought, they work in completely different aspects of training, right? A track athlete is going to train completely differently than an Olympic weightlifter would, right? Yeah, pretty much all agree with that. A therapist is going to be completely different than a track athlete. Bodybuilder is going to train completely different than a Russian weightlifter. So all four of these are four different schools of thought. And we're trying to use those four schools of thought to blend together to create personal training. All right, so we have this one going in, this one going in, this one going in, this one going in. Just leave it open for now. You can put that back in, just in case there's going to be a couple other people coming in. So we have all those four schools of thought trying to teach trainers how to be trainers. But how many of the people that we see coming through the doorway are going to fall into the category of track athletes, Olympic weightlifters, bodybuilders, or in dire need of physiotherapy? Maybe 1 in 100. But the people that need physiotherapy, where should they go? To a physiotherapist, right? So we essentially have four distinct zones of training that we're getting all of our information on how to train from, but they're all four completely different aspects. So then our job is to weed through a lot of the information and say, okay, well, what's going to apply to my 40-year-old office worker who sits at a desk like this all day and wants to lose 20 pounds? Well, we're probably going to look at the bodybuilder because bodybuilders are great at weight loss. But how many of those 40-year-olds are going to say, well, we're going to isolate your deltoids today? And that's going to be an effective workout, even though they can only get to the gym 2 days per week because they work 60 hours a week, right? What about if we say, oh, well, we're going to put some complex training together, we're going to do a medical circuit because we use that in track athletes. Okay, does that apply to this individual though? Probably not the best, but we can still take those elements from it and create a program. Hey, yeah, you can close that now. I think we have everyone in. And I even have a book today. There was one available for yep. So we can take all those dimensions of training and actually make personal, but does that actually solve the problem? Does that actually complete the puzzle? What are we missing in there? Let's say we have a hockey player. Which of these dimensions are we going to try and use to train that hockey player? What's that? Should still use all four. What are evolution of training been like? When I talked with Randy Gregg a little while ago, who was one of the members of the Oilers. He's a doctor up in Edmonton. And I was asking, what did you guys do for training back in the Oilers? Mondays, back and bis. Tuesdays, legs. Wednesdays and Thursdays, chest, triceps. I'm like, it sounds like a bodybuilder's play. He's like, that's what we knew. So what we know today might change in 20 years. Yeah.
Well, you look at they're trying to accomplish in their sport, and then try to build their body to be able to accomplish that sport in a healthy way.
True. So where is our overlying thought process going to go towards? Are we going to gravitate back to what we know, or are we going to try and stretch our knowledge base to something where we say, what is the problem? How do we solve the problem? Right? So that would be an easy way of saying that's how we're supposed to train the body. So if we think of it, we can say that there's another base in here. It's problem-based. So where we start saying, okay, we have, say, a baseball player who wants to get more. They have a couple of problems with their shoulders. Okay, so we're going to involve a lot of sports-specific, but now we still have to steal a little bit to be able to understand scapular mechanics, all that kind of fun stuff. And then we also have to involve sport mechanics of baseball. So kind of step back. Let's say we have that office worker who maybe has a bulging disc in their lower back. They're asymptomatic. So what do? Okay, we'll steal a little bit from some of the post-rehab stuff that we're going to do today. And then we're also going to work on borrow a couple of other things, different disciplines. Some of the major things to look for. What movements cause problems, what movements cause solutions. So this is where we're going to get into a new type of training where we have to really address not just what our interests are or what the major interests and the overlying interests of the individual are, but where the specific problems that they're encountering are and how do we fix those problems. So they want to lose 20 pounds? Great, we know how to do that. What's holding them back from doing that? We can also look at the psychology of it too. So do any of these attack the psychology of training? People are highly motivated over here. Why? Because otherwise they wouldn't be training, right? We assume that people would be fairly well motivated here, not during contest prep phase where they're doing carb depletion and they feel like ass all day long. Maybe we can see people being motivated here because pain is a motivator. But what about that person who just wants to lose 40 pounds because they're overweight? Motivating factor, now we have to start stealing from psychology. So we have to involve different aspects of it, right? So if we just use these 4 schools of thought, we're not creating a complete solution to the problem. So we have to start expanding our thought process and more and thinking about the problem in a different way, in a different light. So when I started saying, don't do overhead pressing yesterday, I got a lot of people's ire up. I got a lot of people saying, I do it this way, I do it that way. Great. Where are we stealing those ideas from? Well, primarily from track, rush. What I'm trying to say is if this is a problem, let's find a solution for it. The problem would be that there's more stress on the area than there should be with overhead pressing, which means we have to change the solution. So if you want to do overhead pressing, cool. When is that applicable? When the person has mobility, when the person has the strength, when they have the stability of their shoulder, then we can start doing overhead pressing. How many people walk into our gym with the required stability, mobility, and strength? 1 in 100 maybe. And even then, there's progressions that we have to go through. So if you want to do overhead pressing with your clients, cool, go nuts with it. Make sure that it's at the right phase, at the right time, with the right client. If you want to do leg extensions with your client, cool, go nuts with it. I might not look at it because I want to just shield my eyes away from leg extensions. But as long as there's a solution to a problem, that involves the leg press, or the leg extension. I'm all right with that. Make sense?